Good morning. I think I'm live. Yes, I am. So you're very welcome. And if you're joining me for the first time, my name is Rebecca, and I'm a homeopath, a holistic health coach, and all-round natural health advocate. And I just pop in here on a Monday at 10 o'clock to share a thought process, a simple practice, a health tip, just anything that I have found works for me and has worked for a large majority of my clients. And I share it as part of my commitment to help as many women as possible to recover themselves, both inside and outside, and become as healthy as possible and live a life of ease and joy. So that's my mission. And yeah, just welcome to this Monday message. It's pretty rainy and wet here in rural Kerry. The weather's definitely turned. Now it's October, and I've actually finally had to admit that I really do need to wear my socks and my boots, which is something I always put off because I just like having bare feet and being in more contact with the ground. But yes, I had to actually succumb to putting a pair of socks and boots on today. So hope the weather is good where you are. Not that weather is good or bad, but we're kind of in the habit of describing it as such, aren't we? So just welcoming, there's a couple of you on. That's great. Just let me know that you can hear me okay. That would be lovely if you just give me a thumbs up or something like that. So today I wanted to just focus on something that I'm noticing. Oh, thank you very much for the thumbs up. I'm noticing a lot of posts at the moment about a so-called list of symptoms that are associated with things like menopause. I believe it's actually October is International Menopause Month, apparently. I didn't know that, but kind of makes sense because it's the right time of year, because we're going into the quieter, more internal, introspective part of the year where we're supposed to be kind of almost hibernatory. And that is often seen as what we're doing internally when we're going through the change. And so it kind of makes sense, I guess. But the thing that struck me was there's this tendency at the moment to provide some kind of list of symptoms. And whilst it's good in some respects because that list does seem to be growing, and that's as it should be, because the way that we express things like menopause or any kind of hormonal change is completely individual and completely in line with whatever our general state of health is, and also what our hormonal history has been up until this point. What I want to encourage, though, is that the word symptom suggests that this is an illness, that this is something that needs to be fixed, that it needs to be medicated, that it needs to be taken away. And that's just not the case. And I don't think it's helpful to regard any kind of hormonal disruption as an illness as such. Now, I know that it can feel like that, and I know that it can feel very uncomfortable, both on a physical level and on an emotional level, and sometimes on a spiritual level as well. I'm very well aware of that, having been through the worst of it myself and come out the other side. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily finished, but physically that seems to be it, but who knows? So I wanted to take our attention away from the fact that menopause is regarded as an illness So stop thinking of them as symptoms and think of them, anything that you may be experiencing or someone else that you know is experiencing, as expressions of the enormous metabolic and physiological changes that are taking place within our bodies at this time of life. And they are taking place for very good reason. Our up until this point, almost our entire reason for being, I know that's controversial, but on a very, basic primal level, has been about our potential to create more of us. And now that is at an end, then the whole of our internal physiognomy has to change to become in line with that. And that means that it's not just a question of, I don't bleed anymore, that's it. The entire system has to be tweaked and adapted and given a makeover, really. And that can take a while. If you think about it as a kind of, maybe you're having an entire makeover of your house, excuse me, and everything has to be rearranged. Walls have to be knocked down, plumbing has to be redone, heating pipes have to be rearranged. The wiring of the house has to be redone. So all of that's happening in our bodies when we are changing from being able to potentially create life to not being able to do that anymore. And so all the changes that are taking place are going to involve a lot of throwing out, a lot of rubbish clearance, a lot of things that are no longer needed are going to be expelled in some way. And as I said, I'm very well aware that that can be quite uncomfortable and actually very painful sometimes, as everything is rebalancing and recalibrating. However, it's still not an illness. It's a process that every single woman on this planet, regardless of your sexuality or your sexual choices or preferences, it's got nothing to do with it. Every single woman on this planet will be going through this transition in some way. And actually, the same thing happens, maybe not to such a degree, but when we reach puberty, when we come out of being a child and into womanhood, and therefore our body is also changing to be able to create life, then everything is also changing then. And we don't tend to think about that end quite so much. But I'm a little bit tired of most of Western society regarding any kind of female hormonal process as some kind of illness that needs to be taken away and needs to be stopped immediately. Now, I'm not suggesting that you put up with the symptoms, the expressions, rather. I'm not suggesting that you put up and shut up, put up with pain or discomfort or, all of those things that can be very, very debilitating. I'm just asking you today to just maybe reframe it and understand that your body is working really, really hard to do something that is essential. It has to be done in one way or another. You have to come through this transitional state. And the fact that it takes a lot of time shows how important it is and how important it is for our bodies to get that right and to do it as efficiently and as productively as possible. And if we reach for some kind of medication, some kind of drug to stop that process, then actually we're delaying the process. We're sometimes actually shutting down a lot of it so that it doesn't happen to its optimum level. Why is this important? Because, again, we're often coached into thinking of menopause as, oh, well, that's it now, that's the end of my life, that's me done. And when we stop and think about it, that's so far from the truth. I mean, from my own perspective, I'm pretty much intending to live for another 20, 30 years. So it's very important that my health is at as high a level as possible for the next 20 or 30 years, because I deserve it and I want to live a really rich and fulfilled and joyous life. Now, I've come through, as I say, I've come through most of the really kind of in-my-face changes. You might not have done. You might be just approaching it. I don't know. But I would encourage you to, once you start noticing that your body is changing the way that you are working hormonally, once you start to detect that there are these changes taking place and that something that might have been kind of like clockwork up until now is not really that predictable anymore, or perhaps you're starting to feel, not quite as in control of things premenstrually or during your period or anything like that, that instead of thinking, oh God, I've got to go and get some kind of drug, there's something wrong here, that you start to think, oh, okay, right, my body is starting to tell me that things are changing, that I am going through a process, and that process might take years. And not think you have to put up with it, but use systems of health that recognize that as a process, as a journey, and that can support you and encourage you to do that process as naturally and productively as possible. Plus, also, obviously, enable you to soothe any kind of real symptoms expressions of pain or, cramping, anything like that. There's also, a lot of the time it's not a coincidence that when we come to this stage in our lives that there are not only this incredible, enormous internal changes happening, but there are also often lots of external changes happening. Often it's a time when our children might be leaving home for the first time, or perhaps the last one is leaving home, and suddenly it seems we're on our own with our partner or without a partner. And it's an invitation to reassess what our life is about. And that can actually induce a lot of transitioning in, what we do with ourselves, literally, day to day, and also where we're going. What do we want for the next 20, 30 years of our lives? So that can be uncomfortable too, because it's a transitional state, and it's one that can be incredibly productive and incredibly creative and empowering if we give it time. And we are able to perhaps get the kind of support that will help us to get clarity and help us to understand ourselves and what we need better and better and better. So it's an opportunity to actually recalibrate everything in our lives if we want to. And this is where I love homeopathy, and it would always be my first choice when working with women who are coming to me with all kinds of uncomfortable symptoms of menopause or any other time of hormonal change, because a good homeopathic prescription will look at every single angle of what a woman is going through. We're not just focusing on, we've got to take away those inconvenient, uncomfortable physical symptoms. We're going to understand why they're happening. And we're going to also start understanding, where a woman might be wanting to go to, what's next, what are we preparing for, how smoothly can we come through this process, and we can support all of that with a really good homeopathic prescription. Also, a lot of things come up to be cleared at this stage. Very old patterns, beliefs, values, everything's up for grabs, basically. And this can be really, really discombobulating. I completely get that. It is a necessary change, though. So that's what I'm inviting you to do in today's Monday message, really, is to reframe how you regard menopause or any other menstrual or hormonal difficulty that you might be experiencing, and to go for systems of health that help support that process rather than taking it away. So when you see those lists that say, oh, did you know there are 34 symptoms of menopause, or 64 or 28 or whatever the number is, then just think to yourself, actually, do you know what? There are as many expressions of menopause as there are women on the planet. Every single woman is going to experience it differently. And I am not about to tell any woman who walks through my door that what they are currently experiencing is, oh no, that's nothing to do with this enormous internal change that you're going through. Of course it is, everything is. So the list is actually endless. So maybe if you haven't already been doing this, a good tip is to start to actually get in touch with your own personal hormonal history, if you like. Start to look at, well, what age was I when I first started bleeding, for example? Can I remember anything about it? Was it traumatic? Or was it okay? And then later on, when did it change, if it changed? What was I doing that could have influenced my hormonal expression? Oh, good morning, Sandra. Sandra's saying, I totally understand all that, Rebecca. So what can we do when estrogen drops dramatically after ovulation? The symptoms are so dramatic and really affecting daily life. Looking at the whole cycle, it's like having a few days of feeling great, and that is around the build-up of estrogen. Yes, Sandra, good question. And obviously what is happening is that your progesterone and your estrogen levels, and many other hormones too, are changing and rebalancing, recalibrating us, because we do not need quite as much estrogen as we used to. So that rebalancing, like any rebalancing, is very kind of like a pendulum, if you like. So you can have that period of time where it hasn't quite found its balance. So you could have a flooding of it one day, and then a kind of lowering it right down the next day. And that can be really, really discombobulating. Completely understand that. There are some beautiful remedies that work exclusively, or not exclusively, because actually no remedy, it's exclusively on one thing. It has multiple actions, but there are many remedies that are known for particularly balancing estrogen and progesterone, for example. There are also herbal remedies that can be very effective if you get them right. There are some over-the-counter herbal remedies, like things like Agnus castus. It can be a very good, or Vitex it's known as, that do work predominantly on balancing that estrogen-progesterone balance. Now, usually takes about 3 weeks to kick in. So if you are going to try it, I'd give it a good 3 weeks before it kicks in. And it doesn't work for every woman because it depends on what's going on. So I would suggest that maybe if you haven't already, trying one of those herbal remedies, or if you come for a homeopathic consultation, it's bespoke, it's tailor-made. So we're looking at everything that's going on, and we're working out what needs supporting, what might need a bit of extra support, because depending on your own individual makeup, both generally and your hormonal history, there will be certain areas that might actually be struggling a bit, that might need some extra tools. So that's what we're looking at when we're finding a really good homeopathic prescription for a woman who is finding life difficult going through this change. So I hope that answers your question, Sandra. So good to hear that. Have nothing tried. They're going to make an appointment with me. Oh, fantastic. Great. Okay. Very good, Sandra. That's excellent. I do think that realizing that what we do, whenever we do anything, actually, we do it individually. Yes, there might be some common symptoms in a kind of broad brushstrokes point of view, but actually how we express any kind of dis-ease or any kind of process or rite of passage, if you like, it is entirely individual. And that's what no pharmaceutical can do. They're not going to be addressing any of those things, whereas a homeopathic remedy will. And that's why I love it. And also with a few other tools that I have, like the QTT personal development methods, they, I find, are also incredibly useful at this time of our lives because of all the other things that come up, the kind of spiritual questioning, or often when women reach this stage in their lives. So I love to combine all of those tools and just, offer support wherever it's needed, basically on an individual basis. So yeah, that's what I wanted to encourage, is to perhaps get a bit more conscious and in touch with your own individual hormonal history. So yes, Sandra, I'm aware you're in the mental health business. Absolutely, I know you get it 100%. It's interesting, though, often we're so focused on helping other people that we kind of forget to turn it inwards sometimes. I don't know, I find that sometimes too. So I'm just offering that out as a possibility. So get in touch with your own personal hormonal history. Journaling, great tool here. Just noticing when you first started bleeding, if you can remember, what was it like? What was that experience like for you? Was it okay and then it went wrong at some stage? Did you start to experience, painful periods or, some kind of discomfort around your menstrual symptom? Were you then put on the pill, for example, given some kind of synthetic hormonal drug to try and take away whatever you were experiencing? Did you then stay on that for a long time? Did that become your life for 30 years or whatever? Because that's going to have an influence on how you go through menopause. So have a look, make a little marker of any kind of synthetic hormones that you've had in your life, because it will give you information, and it doesn't give you information, it will give somebody like me information when you come to me. Noticing your cycle as it is right now as well. Noticing things like mood changes, emotional ups or downs, changes in your physical body and your emotional body, and obviously any spiritual stuff that comes up as well. And noticing any correlations in those changes with particular times in your cycle as you know it. It's a good start to just start to be aware, okay, because sometimes women come to me and they haven't really focused on any kind of pattern in their menstrual history. They haven't equated things like mood changes or tearfulness or weight gain or bowel changes, even feeling nauseous or anything at all, feeling dizzy, having headaches, anything. Often is very related to your menstrual cycle. So starting to notice that is a really good start, and an excellent tool to bring to a practitioner like me. That's something we do anyway. If you come and work with me, is we'll do an individual timeline. So anyway, I could talk about this for a long time. I'm not going to, because I'm mindful of the time. So really, my message today was to encourage you to reframe things like menopause as not an illness, a process, a change, a necessary journey for every woman, and something that needs to be honoured, it needs to be supported, and it needs to be viewed as very much individually expressed, not a finite list of symptoms. You can never say, yep, there are 30 symptoms for menopause. Well, so what are we going to do with the other million women who are not experiencing those symptoms, are actually doing something different? Are we going to tell them they're not, that what they're experiencing is not valid? No, very disempowering. Sandra is saying, thank you, Rebecca. Delighted someone is bringing awareness around this. So many are suffering in silence. Yeah, absolutely. And as women, we are kind of conditioned to do that, aren't we? To kind of put up with things and just plow through, and I'm not important. And that's got to change, really, I think, because this part of our life is not the end. It's actually a new beginning. It is the end of something, because you have to have an end to create a new beginning. But there are many, many years left to us, and we deserve to live them fully. And if we do that, then we're going to influence everybody else around us. So important. It's a kind of responsibility, if you like. So that's all I wanted to say, I think. Just checking that I haven't forgotten anything. So yeah, and I welcome any other comments about menopause, about anything that you're experiencing. If you've got any questions, then do pop them in the comments below. Or if you prefer, then you can book a free call with me, one-to-one call, and I can answer your questions then if you're not sure whether homeopathy or working with me with QTT, anything like that would be suitable for you. We can have a chat on the phone and go through everything that you might need, and see whether we can work together. Okay, thanks very much for listening, and have a wonderful week, and be kind to yourselves. Okay, take care.